There's breaking news! This video shows one of Oscar winner Jay's last appearances. This hour's details of his death include the fact that his front door was open, that there were pills all over the bathroom countertop, and that there was a dead dog in the closet. The world is in shock at the news of Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, dying in their Santa Fe, New Mexico, home. Many people adore Gene Hackman's renowned performances in Hollywood, but few could comprehend the devastating abandonment he suffered at the hands of those closest to him. Without saying a word, his abusive father abandoned the household. Before she could see her son's accomplishment on the big screen, his mother died. Norman Gary, his closest buddy, gave in to hopelessness and committed suicide. And there are a lot of other heartbreaking tales that are yet mostly untold. But Hackman remained unfazed by the suffering. Regardless of his age, he lived with intensity, passion, and an unwavering will to resist life. His narrative is the last chapter of a life full of hardships, fortitude, and an unbreakable spirit. It's not simply about losing a star. Are you prepared to hear the story of a guy who persevered despite being abandoned? A legend in Hollywood, a strong appearance on film. Nevertheless, Gene Hackman left an unresolved tragedy behind and left in quiet. In addition to shocking the public, the news of his and his wife Betsy Arakawa's death at their Santa Fe, New Mexico, home also sparked a number of perplexing inquiries. A worried neighbor noticed that the pair had been missing for a long time and phoned the police on that fateful day. Authorities found Hackman and Betsy dead in different rooms when they arrived. 2 of their 3 dogs were discovered alive, but one was also discovered dead. Many people were shivering because they had never imagined that an apparently tranquil existence would end in such unsettling isolation. The response from one of Gene's 3 children was what really shook the public. The family is still awaiting official results on the cause of death, Leslie Ann Hackman, 58, informed the media. Leslie and her sister, Elizabeth Gene Hackman, conjectured that their father and stepmother could have died from carbon monoxide poisoning due to a possible gas leak. But the couple's death was still unknown. Investigators could not discover any proof of such a leak, despite the theory's seeming plausibility. Rather, the official report said that Gene Hackman and his wife had probably died days earlier due to the decomposition of their remains. Leslie said that before her father passed away, there had been no signs of any health problems. Despite his advanced age, he was in excellent health. "He hasn't had any major surgeries in recent months," she said. He was in terrific health since he still worked out many times a week and loved Pilates and yoga. Even more shocking was Leslie's admission that she was not too shocked by the death of the iconic Gene Hackman and his wife, given that her father was already 95 years old. Her father was a reclusive man who had been absent from her life in California for months. "We were very close. I hadn't spoken to them in a few months, but everything was normal and fine," she said. Leslie has not yet visited New Mexico and said she would not until the police had finished their investigation. According to the Daily Mail, Leslie and her sister were seen eating together at a Denny's restaurant in Burbank, California on February 27th. They were calm and happy. Almost a day after they learned of the death of their father and stepmother, the pictures were taken. One may anticipate that a devoted daughter would fly out right away, check the site, and set up funeral arrangements even if the inquiry might take months. Rather, she took a different decision. Tim Hackman, Hackman's grandson, likewise raised his voice. He disclosed that, while they only communicated every few months, Leslie was the only member of the family that continued to communicate with Gene Hackman. Tim said that he hadn't seen Gene Hackman since attending his father's funeral 11 years before. As it turns out, Gene Hackman either chose or was destined to live a solitary existence in his latter years, cut off from his closest friends and family. The unanswered issue is whether he chose to be alone or whether destiny forced him to do so. The Daily Mail, a tabloid that pays sources to capitalize on explosive news, purchased the exclusive scoop from Leslie. The public is now wondering whether she was really saddened by her father's death or if she was using the sorrow to get attention. When the news of her father's death was breaking, would a really devastated daughter consider selling her story? Hackman wasn't your typical guy. Despite his difficult upbringing, he maintained an unwavering attitude and never gave up. However, in a sad turn of events, he died alone and without loved ones at the conclusion of his voyage. Hackman decided to live a tranquil life in Santa Fe, New Mexico, after leaving Hollywood in 2004. He and Betsy had a modest life away from the bustle of the entertainment business. No more extravagant gatherings, no more cameras that flash. Just an old guy in his latter years looking for a little quiet. It may not have been the tranquility he had hoped for, however. In 2023, he was last saw eating at a nearby eatery with Betsy. The images showed an old guy who was feeble, but nevertheless had the air of a warrior who had been through a lot. There were no pictures of kids huddled by his bed, no family members crying in grief. Only a guy who had been strong in the past, but no one was there to see him take his last breath. Some of the most important persons in his life left him, while others he pushed away. The passing of Gene Hackman marked more than simply the demise of a Hollywood icon. It was the perfect example of the deep loneliness experienced by a guy who had lost too much in life. Did destiny ultimately choose him, or did he make this decision for himself? Gene Hackman was raised in a chaotic home that lacked affection and stability. The family moved about a lot because of his father, Eugene Ezra Hackman, who was employed in the newspaper printing business and had an unstable employment. Because Hackman's father was a severe man who often used violence to discipline his kids, the two had a tense relationship. Due to the oppressive atmosphere in the house, young Hackman, a sensitive but disobedient boy, sought solace in the basement, where he established a personal haven where he felt secure. A life-altering incident rocked Hackman's world when he was only 13 years old. His father abruptly and silently left the household. Hackman was playing with his buddies at the end of the street one morning when he saw his father driving by and waving. Hackman never saw him again after that, and he lived the rest of his life tormented by that moment. When James Lipton questioned Hackman about the memory in an Inside the Actors Studio episode from 2001, he was unable to contain his emotions and acknowledged that it was a challenging memory. He said, "I was at the end of the street, playing with some guys, and he drove by and waved." Hackman only nodded silently, suppressing his emotions when Lipton suggested that maybe he had seen his father again after that. He had learned discipline and violence from this guy, who, in spite of his severity, remained his only source of support, was now gone. Hackman and his brother were abandoned and forced to live at their grandmother's home in Danville, Illinois, with their mother. However, Hackman never really found acceptance from his grandmother, who instead treated him with emotional neglect and icy coldness. In addition to making Gene Hackman strong-willed and tough, these events also sowed the seeds of disobedience and a lasting feeling of desolation. But this was only the start. Hackman would continue to face hardship in the years to come, and sometimes he would be the one causing the same storms that rocked his life. The idea that his mother was the only family member to support and believe in Hackman's acting career troubled him. She told him that he could develop into a gifted performer since she saw his potential. However, such affection was unable to overcome the emotional detachment and aloofness in their family, particularly given his mother's struggles with alcohol and life's challenges. Then catastrophe struck in 1962. A terrible home fire claimed Hackman's mother's life. She fell asleep with a lighted cigarette in her hand while inebriated, which caused the fire to start and swiftly spread throughout the home. Not only did Hackman lose his mother, but he also had to deal with the indescribable grief that she would never see the achievement he had worked so hard to attain. She was unable to see her son become a celebrity and achieve the heights she had once dreamed of, since the one person who had believed in him was no longer there. Despite his reluctance to discuss this tragedy in public, Hackman even said in an interview that "I Never Sang for My Father" would be the movie he would choose to show his mother. His own life, a tale of loss, was reflected in the movie. Hackman as Gene Garrison, a son who is battling a difficult connection with his elderly father and yearns for acceptance and affection. It was a confrontation with the feelings Hackman had carried with him all of his life, in addition to reflecting his real-world conflicts with his father. Similar to Hackman's own life, the movie explored emotional deprivation and his want for affection and recognition, two things he had been denied as a youngster. Hackman conveyed the profound sadness of unresolved hurt and an unmet need for affection, something that was never simple to achieve, through the movie. I Never Sang for My Father is available on streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and Hulu, as well as rental services like Google Play Movies and Apple TV, to let you better explore the hidden layers of Gene Hackman's turbulent existence. Hackman was left feeling very alone and yearning for affection that never materialized as a result of the anguish of losing his mother and the icy disregard of his grandma. However, life prevented him from focusing just on those injuries. The unexpected death of Hackman's best friend, Norman Gary, in the next years dealt him yet another heartbreaking blow. Because he could rely on Gary in trying times, Hackman had found comfort in their relationship. However, when Gary decided to take his own life in 1982, Hackman not only lost a close friend, but also had to face the heartbreaking reality that his closest loved ones had repeatedly abandoned him. In addition to being a personal friend, Norman Gary was a well-known entertainment lawyer who had great respect in the motion picture business. He was someone the actor had complete faith in and had played a key role in managing Hackman's legal issues and contract discussions. Gary seemed to have it all, and was well known for his commitment and aptitude at handling challenging circumstances. However, he had unidentified financial issues that lurked under the surface of his career success. Hackman's untimely death left him not only in mourning, but also with unanswered questions about whether he could have done anything to stop the catastrophe. In addition to being a terrible loss, Gary's passing left Hackman with a huge hole in his heart. Additionally, it created mystery and conjecture about the financial issues that were never revealed, leaving Hackman to live with unresolved concerns. Seeing loved ones go missing one after another caused a guy who had already experienced a great deal of loss since childhood to progressively lock up his heart and look for fulfillment in his career rather than in interpersonal interactions. However, not all losses result in defeat. With a survival instinct developed from a lifetime of hardship, Hackman decided to confront his suffering by devoting himself fully to his vocation. He put all of his energy into acting, playing part after part, not to get away from his feelings, but to prevent loneliness from taking over. And it was during these years of unrelenting labor that Hackman turned his sorrow into inspiration and gave some of his most stirring performances. His steadfast commitment solidified his place in Hollywood, securing him 2 Oscar nominations and enhancing his indisputable brilliance and charisma on film. One would assume that destiny would finally provide him some relief after the emotional toll of losing his closest buddy to suicide. However, it didn't. Marital disagreement quickly became a storm. Hackman immersed himself in his job, flying from city to city, shooting continuously, and switching between sets. Faye, his wife, and their kids progressively faded from his life. His appearance at family gatherings grew rare, and the calls home got less regular. You become incredibly selfish as an actor. You spend your entire life craving recognition, and when success finally comes, it's hard to say no. Hackman acknowledged this in an interview with the New York Times in 1989. Money, fame, temptation, it's all too much for a poor kid like me to resist. Despite Faye Maltz's patient waiting, the gap between them had eventually become too great to close. Following 30 years of marriage, they formally separated in 1986. Hackman's first marriage ended amicably, with no arguments or conflicts, just the lingering remorse of a man who lost his wife too late. When asked what advice he would offer his son in an interview with GQ, he apologetically acknowledged, "I was away from him for too long. I have no advice to give." Did he choose this conclusion? Or did destiny select it for him? In any case, he realized too late, with resentment and sadness, that the price of sacrificing family for career was too great. And even while he may not have chosen this course on purpose, destiny always appeared to work in concert to lead him into a realm of loneliness, where he was ultimately completely alone. Gene Hackman was more than simply a famous figure in Hollywood. He was a man whose passion went far beyond the screen. Aside from acting, speed was one of his biggest loves. For him, racing served as more than simply a pastime, it was a means of finding equilibrium in the demanding realm of celebrity. Hackman's enthusiasm for racing started in the late 1970s when he joined the Sports Car Club of America, a highly competitive group for speed-loving amateur and professional racers. Hackman, however, pushed himself into bigger tournaments and didn't stop at amateur contests. His participation in the demanding 24 Hours of Daytona in 1983 stands out as one of his most noteworthy achievements. He did more than simply take part there. He drove a Toyota for the renowned racer Dan Gurney's squad, something that not many people can do. He demonstrated that he wasn't only there for the experience, he was there to win as he went on to win the Long Beach Grand Prix Celebrity Race. But peril accompanied success. Hackman had a number of terrifying incidents while racing. He was driving an Audi Quattro, one of the most cutting-edge racing vehicles of its day, during the 6-hour endurance race at Sears Point Raceway. The automobile crashed in the middle of the race when the brakes locked up, causing disaster. Hackman was lucky to escape unharmed, but the collision served as a clear warning that speed is always dangerous. He subsequently remarked that, in keeping with his sense of humor, he ought to have had a stunt double for that particular scene. His passion for automobiles extended beyond the racetrack. Both Hackman's strong personality and his changing interests over the years were reflected in his personal collection. He had a Toyota Celica GT in the 1980s and 1990s, which is the same vehicle he used for competitive racing. His collection grew over time to include some of the most exciting and fashionable vehicles on the market: a Mercedes E-Class, which combines comfort and style, a Porsche Panamera, which combines luxury and power, a Ford Mustang Shelby, which is an American symbol of speed and performance, and a Tesla Model S, which pays homage to his love of contemporary technology and the direction of automobiles. His collection was an expression of his passion as much as his fortune. Each vehicle reflected a distinct period of his life and conveyed a tale. However, Hackman finally had to give up racing for his health. As is the case with many intense interests, he openly acknowledged that his reflexes had deteriorated with age, and in a sport that required lightning-fast reflexes, there was no space for compromise. You need to maintain quick reflexes, and when they start to decline, you have to stop, Hackman once said. It was a difficult choice, but it demonstrated his practicality that you begin thinking about old age and realize you have to take care of yourself more. He was a guy who was aware of and graciously accepted his limitations. Gene Hackman's passion for racing demonstrated that he was not just an actor, but also a ferocious competitor who approached speed and challenge with the same ferocity that he gave to his movies. He used racing as a means of demonstrating his tenacity on the track and in life, not merely as a hobby. However, Hackman's lifestyle choices continued to astonish people even as he grew older. Hackman stuck to one car, a Toyota Tundra, while many Hollywood celebrities reveled in accumulating rare and ostentatious supercars. Not a collector's edition oddity or a showy supercar, but a dependable, strong, and useful truck. It was an appropriate decision for a guy who had spent his life as he saw fit. Strong, modest, and never one to fit in. Many folks were shocked when they saw him exiting his Tundra at a Santa Fe petrol station. The vehicle was quite conventional for a Hollywood celebrity of his kind, not because it was particularly noteworthy. However, it was just what Hackman wanted. A car that took him where he needed to go, robust enough to tackle any terrain, and not too showy to draw notice. Hackman seems to have realized a simple truth. Serenity and tranquility, rather than costly belongings, are what make life worthwhile. In addition to being a means of transportation, the Tundra represented the way of life he had chosen after leaving the limelight, one that was devoid of noise, unencumbered by the desire for grandeur, but nonetheless full of quiet power and steadfast purpose, much like the man himself. Gene Hackman was always pushing himself. He entered the world of writing with the same tenacity and inventiveness that had propelled his acting career even after the stage lights had gone down. Hackman wrote 5 books over almost 20 years, each of which reflected his profound understanding of human nature and history. He demonstrated his ability to create realistic people and captivating locations in Wake of the Perdido Star, a high seas adventure, and Payback at Morning Peak, a compelling story of love and retribution. Notably, his prominent role in The French Connection was echoed in the criminal novel Pursuit, establishing a trademark style that connected the renowned artist with new generations of readers. It was more than simply a shift of media when you went from the screen to the paper. Hackman used it as a means of sustaining his creative energy. He wrote to reflect himself, a guy who had faced adversity, understood tenacity, and understood the need for fame, rather than just to tell tales. Hackman previously said in a rare interview that writing gave him the ability to keep his creative independence and direct his own stories free from the restrictions imposed by Hollywood conventions. And he kept inspiring with each page, demonstrating that genuine creativity never really dwindles. Additionally, Hackman spent time painting, a hobby he kept private. Painting served as a release for him and a means of preserving his equilibrium in life. He once said, "I don't want anyone to see my paintings," indicating his need to keep his personal area private. Hackman felt that painting didn't need any recognition or appreciation. It was just a time when he could be completely himself, away from the stresses of being a Hollywood celebrity and the cacophony of the outside world. In a life that had always been lighted up by the limelight, This gave him a rare sensation of peace. Hackman's love of sports was equally impressive. Among his many sports interests, football was his favorite. He was an avid Jacksonville Jaguars supporter who often went to games to support his team. Hackman saw football as more than simply a kind of amusement. It was a means of fostering communal ties and losing himself in the thrill of the game. Fans will never forget Hackman as the epitome of a real tough person, even if he is no longer with them. When he was involved in a street fight in Hollywood in 2001, it was one of the most notable incidents that demonstrated his tenacity. Hackman struck another vehicle by mistake while driving. Unaware that they were facing a former Marine, two young guys emerged, clearly upset. But instead of resolving the matter amicably, they started insulting Hackman. Hackman was 71 and not to be frightened. He responded with a punch without any conversation. Before the cops came to break up the fight, the three guys were fighting in the middle of a busy street. Although there were no arrests, the episode demonstrated that Hackman's fighting instinct persisted in real life long after he stopped making action movies. However, Hackman's near-death experience may have occurred in 2012. He was struck by a vehicle while riding his bicycle in Florida without a helmet. As soon as the accident was reported, supporters began to worry. Many were concerned that he would be gravely hurt or worse. Nevertheless, Hackman lived against all the odds. His injuries were minimal, and he was released from the hospital the same day. Although he grew more careful following the accident and never rode without a helmet again, those close to him disclosed that he never abandoned his bike practice despite his advanced age. Another incident that year demonstrated Hackman's intense protectiveness of the people he cared about. He aggressively assaulted a homeless guy who had been verbally harassing his wife, Betsy, while they were out on a stroll in Santa Fe. Hackman reportedly smacked the man to protect his wife, but the event resulted in no charges, underscoring his strong sense of familial devotion. Hackman was involved in another accident later that year when he was riding his bike in the Florida Keys and was hit by a vehicle at the age of 82. His remarkable toughness and tenacity are further shown by the fact that, despite emergency personnel's hasty hospitalization, he healed swiftly and had no long-term damage. In retrospect, Hackman's hardness was apparent from the beginning. He falsely claimed to be 16 years old in order to join the U.S. Marine Corps. He regarded the military as a means of escape from a chaotic family life, which made him restless. However, for someone as disobedient as Hackman, the rigid Marine environment proved to be a struggle. Because he refused to follow strict rules, he regularly faced disciplinary action and argued with authorities. Nevertheless, he had life-changing events in his capacity as a radio technician. He visited several countries, including China under Mao Zedong, where he was exposed to new cultures and landscapes that expanded his perspective on the world. It wasn't all adventure, however. In one terrifying event, he was involved in a serious motorbike accident after colliding with a tractor. Hackman nearly escaped the crash, suffering many fractured bones. Hackman came to the conclusion that military life was not for him after leaving the Marines. But those years helped him grasp who he was and were a crucial part of his turbulent path. His life was characterized by adversity, near misses, and ongoing struggles, both personal and physical. However, Hackman never gave in to hardship. More than merely a gifted actor, Gene Hackman endured the many storms of life. He was the epitome of fortitude and the unwavering will to triumph despite hardship. He saw loved ones pass away one by one and endured great sorrow, yet he never let himself sink. Rather of shattering him, each setback strengthened his resolve and drove him to establish his value in the art world. In addition to leaving admirers devastated, Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa's deaths on February 26, 2025, left many wondering how someone so resilient and vibrant could go in such stillness. However, his legacy, his renowned performances, and his profoundly moving writings will endure. He made sure that we remember him today as a legend who never gave up by transforming every hardship into a tale worth telling and every setback into a victory. Comment here with your views on Gene Hackman's extraordinary life. Please remember to press like and subscribe if you appreciate tales like this so that you can keep up with us as we travel. To learn more about Gene Hackman's amazing tale, click on the video that is now shown on your screen.